including the Baloch and Balochistan, Baloch conflict with Iran and Pakistan, Tears of Sindh, and a Baloch perspective cultural context. Dr. Dashti is a regular speaker at international conferences where he advocates for the national self-determination of the Sindhi and Baloch nations, and he's also the president of Sindhi Baloch Forum. So, my Dr. Naseer.
Thank you. National identity is made up of cultural and political elements. One of the strategies of colonial power was to deconstruct the social traditions of their conquered population, to weaken their will to resist the colonial occupation. In this context, I would like to briefly discuss the broad and fallacious perception of Sindh being the land of Sufis. I believe that it is a way of deconstructing or mutilating the national identity of Sindhi people. Sufism was entirely an Arab phenomenon. It originated as an expression of apathy towards mundane affairs during the protracted and bloody civil war fought between the Umayyad and Hashemite and the Northern Arabs and the Yemenite tribes during 8th century. Many disgruntled people dissociated themselves from the power struggles and day-to-day social affairs and became ascetics. Initially began as an individual phenomenon. It slowly became a community. Individual Sufis began to communicate with others, and in the process, a small circle of companions developed. In this way, soon many aspects of Sufism became collective and plural, rather than individualistic and private. It became a brotherhood because of the compulsion of a primitive society where survival of individual was nearly impossible. Later, it also incorporated music, dancing, and many other ritual ingredients of a cult. Sufism in its essence was the Arab version of asceticism and atheism. Nevertheless, after gaining popularity among a section of Muslim society, the Brotherhood of Sufis became a tool in the power struggle, and they became the agents of various warring parties struggling for power in the Middle East and Central Asia. Various powers used the network of Sufis to gain valuable strategic and social information. In this way, it was not only the influence of Sufi saints on the masses, which was used by the contenders of power, but their networks of khanqahs or dargahs were also used for information gathering and political propaganda purposes. This triggered massive investment by the power in the shrines and lodges throughout the Middle East and Central Asia and in the subcontinent. Wherever there was a struggle between various power centers, there appeared a strong presence of Sufis in that region, showing a direct relationship between activities of Sufis and the power struggle. During 10th and 11th centuries, the rivalry between Fatimid and Abbasid dynasties for religious and political supremacy of Islamic world caused the creation of various categories of Sufis and peace. Trained and fully knowledgeable personalities among Sufis were dispatched to various regions in the Islamic world by these rival powers for political propaganda in favor of their cause and for gathering information of all sorts. This rivalry of their masters transmitted to the followers of the prospective Pirs and Sufis, which we can observe and in the contemporary world in many parts of the subcontinent. Sunni Usmanite Caliphate and Shiite separate dances in Turkey and Persia successfully employed the strategies of using Sufis as tools in their never-ending rivalry for the supremacy of the Muslim world. This rivalry even extended to areas where there was no direct control of these empires. In Sindh, throughout Middle Ages, the services of Pirs and Sufis were extensively used by different adventurers and plunderers in order to sustain their grip on the people. The Ismaili Sufis were working for the interest of Safavid, while Qadri Silsila was representing the strategic and political interest of Osmani Empire. A large number of Usmani functionaries arrived in Sindh as Qadri Sufis and settled in various Sindhi townships. They associated themselves with already established Gilani and Ajmiri Sufi orders. Before the advent of the Mughals, the services of famous Pirs and Sufis were successfully utilized by some of the ruralist Turkish rulers of North India during medieval times. The Mughals successfully exploited Sufi order in North India to dislodge Afghans led by Suris and then to establish their own legitimacy among the Muslims of North India. Their services were also hired by the British colonial administration. Sufi orders in India were brilliant enough to offer their services to the invincible British Empire. Their services were successfully used by the colonial administrators in reaching rural masses of Punjab and Sindh, and for upholding the morale of those Muslim soldiers who became mercenaries and were in service of the British Army. Their affiliation with colonial administration created significant new opportunities for Sufis, and their power and prestige were Muslim masses increased exponentially. After the creation of Pakistan, they are being used by the state establishment to weaken Sindhi national sentiments. Historically, Pirs and Sufis phenomena in Sindh goes back to the earlier period. It got a foothold during late Umayyad period and blossomed during the turbulent period when the Sindh was facing the brunt of plunderers and adventurers from Central Asia and the Middle East. From the beginning to the present time, they have been used one way or the other by various dynasties and weakening their opponents or creating a psychological medium for the advance on Sindh. They represented a very valuable source of collaboration for powers who subjugated Sindh through centuries. Sheikh Bahauddin Zakaria, Mahmoud Jahania, Sheikh Nur, Osman Marwandi were prominent among those who actively collaborated with those who invaded Sindh in different times. The Sufis and Pirs brought by Arghun invaders were mostly from Qadri and Naqshbandi orders. However, after the occupation of Arghun, Saharwadi Sufis also submitted and offered their services to Shah Hassan Arghun, the new conqueror of Sindh, and return of land and stipend. During early medieval times, Pir Patto, Sayyid Sajjan, Sarwari, Pir Haji Mangu, all belonging to Sarwadi Silsila, became so entrenched in power politics that they transformed from being intelligence gatherers for rulers into becoming kingmakers. Their role as kingmakers came into open when they played a pivotal role in justifying the Talmud coup, which which ousted Kalhoda dynasty from power. At the time of invasion in 1843, the British had already secured the support of powerful Sufis, Peers, and Sajada Nasheeds in Sindh. The role of Maktoum of Hala was pivotal in the general policy shift of Sufis and Peers to support the British in case of invasion. Peer of Pagaro also contributed in the British mechanization prior to the occupation of Sindh. The services of Peers and Sufis were extensively used to pacify Sindhi people. As a result, there was no significant resistance from them against the colonial power once Sindhi forces were defeated at Miami. From East India Company officials, these Sufis were not only tasked to gather information about any opposition toward British occupation, but were also asked to educate among the people of a submissive attitude. Ironically, the same service is being tasked to contemporary Sufis and Peers of Sindh by the state establishment of Pakistan. Portrayal of Sufism as one of the elements of Sindhi national identity has been a historical fallacy. But ironically, majority of Sindhi nationalists innocently used it for political purposes. They used it to present the Sindhi secular mindset against the religious extremism and intolerance of Pakistani state. However, it was quite simplistic on their part to conclude that contemporary Sindhi behavior of religious tolerance and secularism is a result of Sufism, which arrived in Sindh from the 19th century onward. This would ignore the historical fact that Sindh was a mosaic of various religions, languages, and national entities during the golden days of Sindh in the 6th and 7th century, far earlier than the arrival or introduction of Islam in the region. The narrative of Sindh being the land of Sufis, which is ironically gaining widespread acceptance, is not only historically incorrect and superfluous and harmful, but harmful to the Sindhi national struggle against the colonial rule. Glorification of Sufism and its portrayal as the identity of the Sindhi people now became a tool of the state establishment. The concept of preordained destiny and submissiveness of Sufi doctrine were immediately taken up by the state to instill in the mind of masses that, as being the inhabitant of the land of Sufis, they should remain docile and patiently suffer the injustices of the state as their destiny. And there has been the presence of hippies and ascetics in every society throughout the history and everywhere in the world. But labeling or equating the identity of a proud nation who resisted invaders, colonizer, brilliantly, and thousands of Sindhis has given their life for the honor and dignity and liberty of their nation. It should be a denial of their sacrifice if we equate Sindhi nation to hippieism and asceticism. However, there are exceptional cases where Sufis and Peers contributed not only to the development of Sindhi literature and culture, but also in the development of Sindhi national consciousness. One cannot deny the contribution of Shah Latif Bhitai and social Sarmas in spreading the ideas of patriotism, freedom, prosperity of the masses, deliverance from corruption, the spirit of self-sacrifice and tolerance through their literary works. They were indeed the icons of the collective social consciousness of Sindhi nation, the proponent of Sindhi social ethos, and exponent of deep sorrows of the people of Sindh during those turbulent times. Sindhi nationalists could feel proud of having such brilliant sons of soil. However, in the context of contemporary Sindhi national struggle, using the example of Shah Latif and Sachar Sarmas to exalt the whole Sufi phenomena for its permitted sense as collaborators and fifth columnists cannot be justified. To me, Sufism is one of the problems of Sindhi national struggle against colonial rule, which should be seriously discussed among the nationalist political and economic circles. I believe that it is high time for Sindhi nationalists to rethink and reanalyze the pros and cons of the use of Sufism in the furtherance of Sindhi national struggle.